Hello and welcome to this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. I'm Chris Mitchell. Israel warned Palestinian civilians to get out of harm's way during its air campaign against Hamas in last summer's war in the Gaza Strip. But Hamas told its civilians to stay in the path of those bombs and launched rocket strikes against Israeli civilians. But a UN report now accuses Israel of war crimes. But Israel is rejecting those accusations. Israel says the 200-page report was politically motivated and morally flawed from the outset. Israeli Prime Minister Beniamin Netanyahu blasted the council.
The United Nations Human Rights Council has a singular obsession with Israel. It has passed more resolutions against Israel than against Syria, North Korea, and Iran combined. In fact, it's passed more resolutions against Israel than against all the countries of the world combined.
Last week, senior generals from the U.S. and other NATO countries released their own independent report. They said that Israel not only met international standards regarding the laws of armed conflict, but in many cases significantly exceeded those standards. Some are saying that Israel's standard is so high, it challenges other Western nations. During the 50-day conflict, the UN Commission said 1,462 Palestinian civilians were killed, a third of them children. It criticized Israel for disproportionate force and failing to change its tactics during the war when civilians were killed, even though Israel warned civilians in several ways.
But it's hard for me to see how Israel could have done better. In other words, what could it have done more than warn the people the way they did? What could it have done more than make phone calls to individuals inside buildings about to be attacked?
Reserve Lieutenant Colonel Advocate David Benjamin is the former IDF chief legal advisor for the Gaza Strip. While the report says Hamas launched more than 4,800 rockets and 1,700 mortars at Israel, it stops short of blaming Hamas for starting the war.
It kind of puts the blockade against Gaza as being maybe the root cause. Doesn't suggest that actually the blockade is there because of Hamas terrorism.
Ironically, Hamas also rejected the findings of the report because of its comparison between Israel and Hamas.
I think that the fatal mistake and big problem in this report that all the time they try to make kind of comparison.
Mary McGowan Davis, chair of the commission, said they don't have the evidence to prove war crimes were committed.
It's a great source of regret that on this occasion we could not travel to Israel and the occupied territory to meet them face to face.
Well, there's a built-in problem, is that most of the decisions to attack certain buildings or targets are based on secret intelligence. And that secret intelligence you can't have the enemy knowing about.
Palestinians intend to use the report when they file claims of war crimes against Israel at the International Criminal Court. Benjamin said it's a great propaganda tool for them, even if it doesn't have much substance.